Okay, we are live for everyone to watch. Hold on one sec, go to full screen. There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Masters today. I'm Tim Watson. I'm joined today by Master Jim DeBaca from California. Hello, sir.
Hello, good afternoon.
Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
How's it going out there in California? We were just talking. It's not too bad as far as the weather goes.
Today's sunny and we're expecting rain, which we really need for the next week. So that's great. Everything's good on that front.
That's good. Yeah, you were just telling me about the embers. You just share that real quick. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, they just found that we had a big wind probably about a week ago, really windy, and the wind blew off some of the topsoil. And last summer we had fires, and some of the embers underneath were still hot, still burning, and they flared up some fires in the forest. I hadn't heard that before, that after 6 months the embers would still be going, and we haven't had a lot of rain, so that's probably attributed to that.
Wow.
But we're fortunate now. We're getting out of the fire season.
Yeah, as if everything that we've been dealing with for the past year or so wasn't bad enough. Now you're dormant embers are now.
Yeah, we had to evacuate for the last 3 years, at least once, So but we're fortunate. Our house hasn't burned, and we're very fortunate.
How are you from California? How long have you lived in California?
Well, I've lived here most of my life. I was born in Oregon, but shortly after moved to California. I was raised in Sonoma County here. It was a wine country, they call it. A lot of vineyards and redwood trees. It's very green here. Normally, we get enough rain, but I was raised here in California, so it's my home.
Nice.
Yeah.
Lindsay from the UK, when she said it's chilly 33 degrees there, so so anyone that's watching, if you have any particular questions for Master DeBaca, please feel free to share as we talk. We'll go through. So as far as the martial arts go, how did you get your start?
Well, I started in 1972. I was a bachelor, and a high school friend came over, and he was visiting, and he'd come over regular, and he says, "Hey, I got to leave early." I said, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm going to Tang Soo Do." I said, "Well, what's that?" He says, "Martial arts." And I'd always been fascinated with with the Bruce Lee and the playing the TV series there. And so I said, "I'd like to go with you." He said, "Well, let me talk to my instructor, see if it's okay." Now he had just sold his studio and was in his garage getting prepared to go to another location. So he said, "I'm not sure if they have room for you." So long story short, I went over there, began training, and I stayed with it. As a matter of fact, a couple of years ago, I saw this same friend, Scott, and a high school friend, and he says, "Man," he said, "something. I was a green belt. You started, and look at you. You're still training." And I wish I had never stopped, but just coincidence. And I didn't necessarily pick Tang Soo Do. It was just that's where he went.
Right.
And there were only 2 schools in town. It was a Kempo school and then my instructor. And unfortunately, the school I went to, Master Frank Scalersfield, really talented man. And Master Stein trained under him, Master Ed Ramirez, Master Duffield. So I got in Master Lowe, and I got on in with all these people who really, it was serious training. And I didn't realize how good I had it, So that's my story of starting Tang Soo Do.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a similar story where I was hanging out with a friend, and they were like a brown belt, and it was the same thing. It's like, "Hey, my instructor is telling me to stop, missing class to play video games with you. Why don't you just come to class with me?" And although he actually stuck around he's a master as well. So.
Oh, good. Now, how long ago was that?
It was It'll be 20 years this year.
Oh, good, good.
So
Yeah, I just remember it was challenging. I'm a musician. I play drums, and I felt I was pretty coordinated, and doing some of these moves were uh, new to me. And I thought, gee, uh, I took it as a challenge. And we were very old school. There were no kids. There was one teen and one female, and she was very good. And we trained on cement floor. We did takedowns on cement floor. But I remember one of my first classes, Master Mike Lowe was a brown belt, and he was showing me how to do round kick. And so I'm on the wall, and you pick the chamber, and you pivot, and so on. He says, "Go ahead, you kick. I'll be over here working with somebody else." So I was kicking. It seemed like forever. And he comes over. He says, "Let me see what you got." And I it was a round kick. I thought I did great. He looks at me and goes, "You'll never get it." And he walked away. And so I could have taken that and said, "I'm out of here," but I took it as a challenge. I said, "Oh yeah," and in my mind, I said, "Oh yeah, I'll show you." And so it was just so I stayed with it because it was a challenge. That's what I liked that. It was good. So he kind of inspired me without knowing it.
that's right. Yeah. It's like, oh, really? I'll show you.
Yeah.
So how long did you train you said it was in a garage. How long were you in the garage?
They were remodeling his new
Oh, okay.
studio. It took about 8 months, a year, and then we got into but we used, like I say, do takedowns on the cement. And I remember one new guy coming in and he says, "Are we ever going to get some mats in here?" And my instructor said, "There's no mats out in the street. You learn how to fall." I said, "Oh." So I think that was his last night.
Oh, no. It's interesting as an instructor, and I've taught on mats for years, and I say that often that the mats don't teach us the bad habits that if you fall hard on a hard floor, you learn pretty quickly how to do it right.
Oh yeah. And Master Stein wrestled in high school and college, and I attribute a lot of my grappling experience from him. And he even coached high school wrestling and even assistant coach there at the junior college here. So we were fortunate to have that cross training and experience falling on the cement, like you said. Hapkido, I know you're a Hapkido student as well. You guys fall all the time, probably a lot more than we did. But you're right, you get comfortable on a mat. Yeah.
Yeah. So you started your Tang Soo Do training, and I know going through the years, you also did some kickboxing as well. Was that through the same studio or?
Yeah, my instructor was a boxer before he went to Korea in the military, and so he trained. As a matter of fact, he married a Korean, and so he would go back there a couple of times a year. That's another story. But his wife told us they called him the Rat, and they called him the Rat because he would go from studio to studio. He wanted to see which was the toughest studio, and we found the one he thought was toughest. He trained there. So a lot of the sparring we did, we didn't have sparring gear back then. And when we went to a tournament, very seldom would you see anybody with any kind of protection. And there was punching to the face. It wasn't supposed to be hard punching. But then and in the early days, it was called full contact karate. It wasn't called kickboxing. And Joe Louis was one of the forerunners, and Bill Wallace.
Yeah.
And so I had boxed as a kid at the boys club, and for about 3 years. And I thought, oh, this is kind of great. So my instructor was putting together a kickboxing team, and Master Stein was our captain, and Master Duffield was one of the trainers, and we began full contact. Now we did San Chow, which is with takedowns.
Sure.
If you ever watch Kung Lee,
Yes.
He's phenomenal. He's
Yeah.
takedown. But we couldn't fight on the ground, but we could do takedowns. Well, it was something that really attracted, my attention, and so Tuesday and Thursdays were kickboxing, Monday and Wednesdays were my Tang Soo Do. So having that crossover. And then we had people come in, they just want to do the kickboxing. And what you would see, some of these guys were boxers, but what you would see with these guys is they couldn't kick. And with my Tang Soo Do training, we could kick, that's what we do.
Right.
You have to choose your kicks, because you got a person trying to knock you out, and you don't want to try to do some wushu butterfly kick and get hurt. But I really was thankful. I was able to travel to Australia. This was all amateur now; it wasn't professional. Fight the Australian team, and then the Philippine team came over here. We fought the Philippine team, and so that was really enjoyable for me. At some point, though, you get too old for that contact. You're and Tang Soo Do you can do forever, right? Form, geez, with it, such great exercise. So I think the coordination, and I could see the difference in the students that trained Tang Soo Do and did kickboxing versus the people who came in just for kickboxing. The coordination wasn't the same. I mean, some people are natural athletes. There's no getting around that. But the average person, the benefit is in Tang Soo Do, it coordinates you. I mean, patting your head, rubbing your stomach, it's a simple thing. But some of our coordination drills, and when you learn a technique, you have the coordination to pull it off. And some people learn quicker than others, obviously, depending on their physical ability. But that was my Tang Soo Do, and my instructor was very good. Frank Scalzo, he passed away a couple of years ago. But I have a lot of respect for him. He was a good. I don't know too many people who are met up to his level. He was on the Korean when he was in Edon. He was on the Korean fighting team, and so one of the few Americans. Interesting story. He married a Korean, and they would go back to Korea a couple times a year. And my instructor would learn new forms. And he'd come back, and we didn't have videotapes back then. So his black belt, he had a black belt class, and he showed us a new form. It was maybe at that point way out of our rank, but I didn't know. He just, come on, he'd have us go through the form. And I didn't appreciate till I left how much experience he had, and what he taught me was above my level. That I have other senior black belts in the class. They were learning the same form right along with me, and it was great. Some of the Mudokwan forms that we like, Jite and Teguk, and some of these forms that we don't do in our World Tang Soo Do, I still practice those and pass those on to my students, because it was interesting, just filler forms. They want to get something different. Maybe they've got their forms for the next rank, and they're ready, and I could give them another form. Staff forms were different. Our knife forms were different. So I use those as filler forms. But that, we're getting away from kickboxing, but that's part of me.
No, it's it all links together. Master Godwin has been very good at doing the same thing, where he would learn. We have a number of staff forms past the first 3 association ones that he learned from Master Durkol, or the Kwans, that he's passed on through many generations of instructors and students. And we from that probably have another dozen or so forms that, like you said, we can teach. We go from Chodan to Edon in the association. There you got a Bongyang Sambu and the Hanchi Edon. Really have so much. So that extra curriculum is great.
Well, I was teaching a clinic at back in Florida, and I had one of the black belts asked me. I said something about advanced students, need this, and you got to do this with your advanced students. And the instructor said, "How do you keep advanced students?" And I said, "You keep advanced students by teaching advanced material, providing that they can handle it." There's also a saying: you don't give a choking horse more food, right? So if they've got more on their plate than they can handle, then obviously that's not the person to teach. So I would teach based on their ability.
Well, like you said, with your instructor, when you teach it, it helps you remember it, because if
Yes.
you can only retain it so much if you don't practice it. And being an instructor, it's a whole different animal trying to teach a form to someone.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think the forms, I had a guy come to me one time. He came up and he was checking out my studio, and he says, I want to train, but I don't want to do form. Bruce Lee says there's no form. I said, well, I don't think that's what he meant. He meant
Right.
you don't get rigid in one thing, but form is is a lot of purposes for form. He had it set in his mind. He didn't come back. That's if you're here, you're going to learn form.
Right. I just want to say hi to some of the people that are watching. Master Wolverton says, "My mentor, the best of the best."
Hello, Becky.
Master Don Khan says hello from the UK, and from Mr. and Mrs. Oh, and Master Khan actually just messaged me. Brian Ormiston, he's from Florida. He asked if your initial Tang Soo Do was with Mutaquan.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes, and I that's where we got the Mutaquan forms from. My instructor did break off and start his own. He was a sixth dan. He's a sixth dan since the 70s.
Wow.
And he broke off and started the International Institute of Tang Soo Do. He said he didn't like the politics of the Mutaquan, and he would sponsor some of the Koreans to come over, and they would come over and outrank him, even though he had a lower dan number. But he, that was his thing. So he started his own organization, but he never called himself Grandmaster. He stayed a sixth dan. Matter of fact, we're kind of relaxed on the West Coast. We call him Frank. That's what he wanted to be called. But I tell you, there was an invisible line he didn't go over. I mean,
Right.
he was the type of guy. He was old school. I see him. One of his black belts got out of control, and he sparred him. This is very old school. Understand? I'm not condoning this, but he taught the guy a lesson. He took his belt off of him, and he told him to leave.
Wow.
So there was a line we didn't go over. We very much respected him, but we called him Frank, and that was his persona. He was, like I say, he never called himself Grandmaster. He was that confident, about himself. He didn't really care. But like I said, maybe we're more relaxed here on the West Coast. I don't know.
No, I mean, like you said, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you call someone if that respect's there. Like I have friends that are called, like my friends in Salonas. There's two of them, so one's Master George and one's Master Angel, and they get all the respect that they deserve from their instructors, regardless of what they call them. So, Master Khan says, "I remember sparring with Master DeBaca. This man is tough."
Master Khan knows how to fight. I can tell you that right now.
I've heard a lot of stories about him as well.
Yeah, he's a monster. He's a monster.
Master Pat Marsh says, "Young man." So through this,
I wish to be a young man again.
So through the 70s, did you have the opportunity to meet Grandmaster Shin before the start of the association or around that time?
No. I was teaching out of my garage, and I was bringing my students to my instructors for testing. But my instructor, like I say, is very good. He would go to the Philippines a couple times a year, and he was doing Arnis for Screama. And I don't think they're the exact same thing, but we trained, and he was very good. He very coordinated, very athletic, and he was very good. And so for a few years, he even brought Remy Priestess over here to do a demonstration during one of our kickboxing matches. And he got busy, and he got connected with the police department, and he was teaching baton training to the police officers. And he was also he was going to school, got a counseling degree, and he was counseling police officers who were needed that. So he was very busy, and we weren't getting what we were hungry as as we could be to learn new stuff. And I was a sumdan. I was actually I was an Edon. I wasn't going to test, and I had some students testing for Shodan. So my students said, "Why don't you test?" So I tested. So we're talking about about 1980, and I think in '82 it was after the Charter Convention, Master Ed Ramirez met Grandmaster Shin in San Jose. And I'm not sure exactly what was going. It was a clinic of some type for promote the World Tang Soo Do, and so Master Ramirez had also been in Korea and trained in Korea, and he called Master Stein and myself and Master Duffield. And we all had a meeting here in Santa Rosa, California. He says, "Listen, I met this. We're looking for something. We can get more involved with." And he says, "I met this Grandmaster Shen." I said, "Really?" And he told us the whole story and how he was a real honest person. He said he had met in Korea some masters that he wouldn't really trust because this man is genuine. So I joined the association. And now we hadn't had a regional director here at this point. Master Ramirez was kind of getting me and Master Stein and a number of other schools. He had a lot of influence from the Santa Cruz area, Salinas area, got him into the association. So then we finally got a Master Bill Kling and retired from the military, and he was going to have a clinic and bring Grandmaster Shen out. And this is in '83. So I met Grandmaster Shen for the first time in this clinic. And coincidentally, since Bong Soo Han, Grandmaster Bong Soo Han, you being in Hapkido, you're familiar with him. He did all the movies with Billy Jack. He was there also visiting. It was a surprise.
Wow.
Grandmaster had his grandmother. And so I got to meet both of them at the same time. And we had a clinic, and then that was my first meeting, Grandmaster Shen.
That's awesome. When did you get the chance to actually start teaching? I'm assuming along the lines of helping your instructor. Was there a moment where he just kind of pulled you aside and say, "Hey, take these guys to work with him"?
Well, I was a Chodan.
Okay.
And so he had me assist. And then when I got my Edon, he had me teach some of the classes. He would teach for the college, local college, junior college. And these people would, PE credits or whatever. And I would teach some of those classes. They were like 3-hour classes. So I had to try to be innovative to keep it interesting. I mean, you don't want to run people into the ground, and these people are just there to get credits for their class. Right. But you have to keep it interesting to keep them in class, and so that was a challenge for me, and that helped me. So all these learning things, it's apprentice program. When I had got with the World Tang Soo Do, all my blue belts had to assist in teaching, and they didn't teach, but they had to assist the black belts. Once they got the first degree, they continued assisting, and at Edon they got their number of hours in. They taught one class, and that 1 hour class I didn't have them teach all week, so they all divided up. So sometimes I have 3 instructors in a class, but they taught one class. At the end of 2 years, if they completed their own training and they tested for Edon, I would certify them as an instructor. And so that was their apprentice program, so to speak. And I think that worked out well for me. I didn't pay my instructors. But I did pay their instructor certification. But it was an honor to be able to teach, in a way. Don't you think?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I got my start the same way. As a Chodanbo, I did the same thing until I got my black belt, and then like you said, I got my instructor certification and all that stuff. So, there's something to be said about that.
When I got my I got my instructor certification from my instructor, Frank Scalesio. So I had that, and again, I would the only I wanted to get a black belt, so I got a black belt, but I wanted to get an Edon. That was my goal, because there weren't a lot of black belts, but the ones who were, they were Chodans. And I said, I got to make it past the hump. There's a hump that people didn't stay long. They got their black belt, maybe they left. And so I got my Edon. And like I said, I wasn't going to test again. And my students testing for Chodon said, yeah, come on. And I got my sum done and never thought about, I said, okay, I'll test. And then our regional director, Mr. Klingon, said, you know, you've been a sum done for more than enough years to test for your master's. And there were no master's clinics at that point. So you had to videotape the test and send it to Grandmaster Shin along with your essay, you know, your paper. So I said, he said, you need to test. You need to test. We don't have enough masters out here in the West Coast, but I know all the forms.
Right.
When I first met him, he said, what's your highest form? I said, Takedown. He said, that's a 7th degree black belt form. I don't know that form. And I didn't know what to say. That's one of the reasons at the time I'm thinking, gee whiz, how did I learn that form? Like I said, my instructor would show us these forms ahead of our rank. So I said, okay, I'll test. So I tested and never asked to test. Grandmaster Shin would, if I got asked to test, I would, but never thought about, right. I think I took that from my instructor. He, being a 6th dan and starting his own association, never saying I'm a grandmaster, and I like that humbleness. And I'm not saying I'm the most humble guy, but I really respected that.
Sure. Well, you know, watching the comments, your fellow 7th dans are chiming in, and I think of the same of these guys like Master Sharp says, WTSBA rock star. Master Godwin.
I'm jealous of Master Sharp's ability. He said he was jealous of my hair. So, and Master Sharp and Master Sharp and your instructor, Master Godwin, I mean, these are 2 of the best in our association.
And then there's Master Valentin says Master DeBaca has a mean cane form as well.
Oh, gee, yeah, I created a basic cane form.
Yeah.
Because in our association, you're not going to learn the cane form until you're, you know, at the master's clinic. And I thought it'd be good to have an introduction form, so I just created this basic cane form, and I started showing it to my Chodons, and along with a lot of self-defense cane techniques I got from Master Witten, and I give him credit for being just amazing form. He was the head of our forms committee before he left the association, but he was good. His cane techniques are really phenomenal. So I would teach these. Again, we talk about teaching advanced material. You know, this is not an advanced form by any chance. By the way, on Master Becky Wolverton is our regional director. She has put a link on our, I don't even know how to get there, but on our regional website. And because Master Utek had asked me, can you teach virtual? And I said, well, I don't really do Zoom, and I don't really have the capability. But I said, I have these DVDs, the cane form, the 30 takedowns, the 20 advanced 1-steps, the add-ons to our existing 1-steps, and some SUSIC exercise and conditioning drill. I said, I give you the, I'll just give you the DVDs, and you can you know, let people access these. So, any long story short, Becky Rupp took over, and she's now had them uploaded to our somehow to our Region 1 website. And I'm a white belt in computers, but the masters and studio owners, she'll, if you connect with Master Wolverton, and she'll provide the link to those. And it's, you know, anybody wants to have it. They weren't doing any good sitting on my shelves, you know, the DVDs. So I think, well, let's let people enjoy it if they want. You know, it's not for everybody.
Sure. Yeah, if the link is available, if it's on the if it's shareable, I'll take a look, and if I can find it, if I'm allowed to, I'll share it on this page as well.
There's also, I put these together years ago. I have some of my students doing sparring techniques, but they're I put them together, and there's punching to the head, so they're probably not applicable for our regional or world tournaments. But I put these together, I don't know, a long time ago. I mean, some of these things. and the 30 takedowns, and that's the kind of stuff. Master Stein was very instrumental. I was head of the Dairy Young committee, and so he was. I dragged him in and said, "You're part of my committee." so we worked together on a lot of this stuff.
Master Wolverton says that Master Utek will be sharing them during the Masters training clinics. So,
oh, okay.
So there you go. The plan is in place. So you've mentioned Master Stein. What is it? You started in 72. So, you're one of those guys that you just train, right? It's been almost crazy, almost 50 years. What does it mean to you to have a training partner that has been around, pretty much the entire time you've trained? What does that mean to you?
Well, you use the term train, and I'm not. This is just my observation. We trained, and when you said I'm going to go to martial art training, we trained.
Right.
I think training with Master Stein, it was pretty serious, and he being a wrestler. I just want to use one side note with him. We were in a kickboxing class, and we were getting ready for a tournament and to Australia. So I was going to we were sparring, and I could never take him down. He was so good. And yeah, he was. Let me back up a minute. He was a Chodan when I started, and then shortly after that, my instructor took him to Korea to test for his Edon, Master Stein. Anyway, so here he is. He and I are sparring, and we got to go. And he kicked, and I grabbed his leg. I said, "Oh, my ego got the best of me." I said, "I got him." I went to sweep his other leg, and I don't know how. Somehow I ended up on my back. but he was so phenomenal. So training with him, and now he's head of the young committee, and he's got such a great memory for form, and I have to access his expertise pretty regular to remember my forms, because I'm be honest, I'm getting rusty on them. And I had closed my school a couple of years ago, and in hindsight is the best thing, because I wouldn't be able to pay the rent. I don't do Zoom, and I don't do any of that stuff. And they wanted me to sign a 5-year lease, and I'm getting a little older. I didn't think I needed to do that. So I just do clinics and train. But it was training. It wasn't an activity. And I think nowadays, and the good thing is having an activity is the young people. I told you my instructor had no kids.
Right.
So young people can have the activity, or they call it training if they want, but you can't run it like we did in the old days. You run all these people out. My instructor never had 100 people at one time. He had a lot of black belt, people he promoted to black belt. A lot of people came through, but the classes were never huge because it was training. And how many people want to really train twice a week? You come in, and the extra Saturday workouts, if you're on the kickboxing team, how many people are going to do that? There are some. Look at the people in MMA. These people train, right?
Sure.
But we were now, and that's part of my persona teaching. I took it from him. It was hard training. So I never taught my kids classes. I did teach a sparring class on Saturday, but I thought if I teach it, if this is my personality, I may drive these kids out. And I would always pre-test them. And I had some kids stay on the red belt for a year and a half. And so I took a lesson from Master Lappin. I talked to the parents. I said, "Listen, I'm going to have a half red, half blue belt. It's going to be an in-house test, but to motivate these kids, I want to have them test." And they were good with it because their kids were getting impatient, but they weren't ready. They weren't ready for blue belt. So I tested them. Of the 3 in that incident, 2 got their black belts, and one dropped out at some point. But the ability to have kids come in and do something positive is a good thing. So that's a plus. That's a big plus.
Right.
The training part of it, you're still going to have people who train hard. But I always ran my studio kind of serious. And I didn't mean to be say that we train hard. Everybody else, that's not what I'm saying. Is that I had to teach the way my instructor taught, the way Master Stein taught, and the way that's what we did.
Right. I love a quote that I found, I think it was on your website, that you said that students will live up or down to your expectations. And I think that's a quote that we can all look at and apply to our teaching, whether we teach kids or adults, that, I think we can always expect a little more from people than they think they are capable of. So,
Sure.
I appreciate that mindset. And,
Well, yeah, I like that. I heard. I'm not even sure where I heard that. It might have been Brian Tracy or something. But
okay.
But then again, I'm more into maybe because I'm older, into the yin and yang. We know about and yang, yin and yang. Grandmaster Shin talks about it in his book, The Essence, I think. But do we need to? I try to follow the yin, being feminine and the yang being masculine. I ran my school in the yang, and so I probably could have benefited business-wise had I done a little more. And what I mean by that, there's a great book by Jason Gregory called Effortless Living, and it's a really good read. He talks about the yin and yang, but the Tao Te Ching and Lao Tzu and Shang Shu, and a very, very insightful book. But the yin and yang, he talks about what was meant was to live in the yin, live in the feminine, and then use the yang sparingly. And the example he gives is you're going to make chocolate milk. So the yin is the milk, the yang is the chocolate. So you don't put 8 ounces of milk and 8 ounces of chocolate. You get a mess. You get a big muddy mess. So you use the yang sparingly as needed. And then Bruce Lee used to use the Taoist principle. You throw a big boulder into the water gives way, and then smothers the rock. So that I probably could have used a little more in my earlier days.
Well, like you said, that's how you were brought up, and we typically tend to stay pretty close to our roots.
Yeah.
Master Chappell from the UK says, what do you talking about the old school training, what do you miss from the old school days, and what do you love from the current days as far as training? Are there things that you kind of wish that didn't fall to the wayside, but things that have improved training currently?
Well, there's one thing that I could say. I'm older now, and I used to. If you see any of my DVDs, you look at the conditioning tape, and I look at some of the stuff that I did. That was really. I mean, we're doing jumping squats with a bar on my shoulders and step up. I mean, jumping over bags and all this crazy stuff, and we would do it for 3 minutes, 3-minute rounds. And then at age 35, I said, I'm not competing anymore. So I cut down to 2 minutes. But I look at some of that stuff I did, and in terms, I wouldn't change anything in terms of how hard I ran the school, but I'd make sure that people who were older didn't subscribe to that. And I had some people that were older, testing for black belt, and I tried to get them to back off a little bit. And I've had my knee replaced and my shoulder replaced. And looking at this video, I hadn't seen it in a long time, but when I sent it to Becky Rupp, I said, let me check this out. I said, oh, no wonder I had my knee replaced. Gee, look at this stuff, like duck walks across the floor with a bar on your shoulder and walking and throwing front kicks while you're duck walking. It was crazy. So I think what I appreciate now more is form. I do it young, and but I still work out. I work out. I do my walk run. You're not supposed to run with the replaced knee, but being the yang,
Well, I won't tell you.
I walk and I'll run the hills so I don't hurt my knee. But I think what I miss is when people want to train hard. Many martial arts school again is activity. So where do they go? They go to MMA.
Mm.
And then they get kicked around for a couple of weeks and they leave. So their impression of martial arts is not if we gave them a more serious approach, and I'm not going to single out any schools in our area, but if we gave them a little more serious approach, maybe they wouldn't go to MMA, at least not right now. I have some students who are competing, and there's a MMA school close by, and one of my son does. He asked me, he says, Master DeBaca, he said, I'd like to train, and he's young. And I said, well, this is the time to do it. So he went over there, and I said a couple things, though, if you go over. I don't want you getting any of that macho attitude.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people are getting mouthy to their opponent. That's not Tang Soo Do. That's not what we do. Number two is you don't let them put you in a fight before you're ready. And then the third thing, wear that earpiece so your ears don't look foolish. You don't get those cauliflower ears.
Sure.
Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. He didn't wear it because he wrestled at high school. But
Right.
I looked at him and said, "You're not wearing your ear guards, are you?" Yeah, but so anyway, I think that there's room for both. There's room for the activity and there's room for training as well in martial arts.
Yeah.
Another thing that really stands out is, well, we used to go do demonstrations in the 70s. You know, you do Kicho Hang Yobu, you know, the basic forms, and people, oh wow, what is that? You know, they hadn't seen a lot of martial arts, and then you break some boards, you do a little bit of self-defense. Nowadays, it's all extreme, you know, extreme sports with the wushu, butterfly kicks, and all these different crazy things. So I think that I like that. That takes hard training to do some of that stuff, and I think that. And I know our association, we have a Harangdan branch that works with the young people on doing some of that, and I think that's a good thing. A little more flair, a little more flash to go along with the tradition. We can't throw out the tradition because that's what Tang Soo Do is versus some Taekwondos.
I remember when the first time I went to World Championships, I think it was 2004, and I love logos and you know, I was a brand new black belt and I'm looking at all the different DeBaca, and I remember seeing you and your Fitness Fanatics logo, and I remember asking someone, was like, where is this guy from? Because you're a pretty tall guy, you got the hair, you know, like you said, you're working out doing duck squats, and so where did that logo come from? And you know, part of that, Master Wolverton says the 200 Takedown Club in the old days at Fitness Fanatics.
Yeah, we would do takedowns in a particular. I didn't really plan on one. I just addressed the takedowns. I didn't plan. I don't plan my classes. I would go up. We do our warm ups. Everybody have to do is 150 stretch kicks, 25 of each leg of this, 25 each leg of this, 25 each leg of this. So it's 150. While they're doing that, I would think about what we need to restart some basics, and I would go on. And so we have a class, we're going to do takedowns. And we go around the room in a circle. You do number one all the way around. Everybody, the next guy follows, and you're doing all these takedowns, and then you go to the next. Anyway, so she called it 200 takedown drill. But the first, I had actually 2 logos. I had one where martial art was standing in a Hanbal Jase, and I got that out of a magazine. I just thought it was pretty cool. That was, you know, back before I opened my studio. And Fitness Fanatics, I saw an article about stereo equipment. Of course, how many people use stereo equipment anymore except me? I still play albums and cassette tapes, but it said made in Japan by Fanatics, and I was constantly thinking, what am I going to name my fitness? Because I had weightlifting. I had a floor of nothing but weights, and I had a mezzanine with nothing but heavy bags, and we did cardio kickboxing there, and then upstairs was my Tang Soo Do. So and then but I had the reef, and Grandmaster Shin was concerned about the reef because of his split from Mudokwan, and there was a issue about using it. So I changed my logo to the guy in Basai who was doing it, but I kept the fitness fanatics, and so that's where my artwork came from.
Another thing Master Wolverton said, ask about his saying, I have stuff to teach you I haven't made up yet.
Yeah, actually, that I got from Master Stein. We were talking about, and somebody said, "Wow, you guys are showing us all this stuff, but we didn't have it in class. It was a clinic." And Master Stein actually coined that phrase: "Says we got stuff to teach we haven't thought of yet," which is true. You got to you got to be creative. You got to be creative. You can't be stuck in a rut. That's why I came. Master Stein and I did the 20 advanced one steps. See, in the Mudokwan, we did punching and kicking combination together. We didn't have hand El Susik, kicking El Susik, and Hosen Sul, which we did, but it was all put in. We, you kick, punch, and then arm lock somebody. But so I noticed that, for an orange belt, you're doing 1 through 5, and then so on through the belts, you're doing all the way up to 30. And then I noticed at a black belt test, these people are doing 1 to 30, or if whatever they prescribe. And then I would stop. I say, okay, everybody create your own. So I'd hit the proctor would tell them, create your own. Panel wants to see it, and some of them were kind of stuck. They didn't know they could. What's the saying? I have it on back of one of my cards. He didn't know it couldn't be done, so he did it. But these people thought it could be done, and then you told them, well, you can do it. And so we came up with these 20 advanced one steps. And to be honest, when I taught my students, I never taught all 20. I get up to 12 or 14. Pretty soon they knew how to make up their own better than stuff I came up with. They were very creative, and you doing Hapkido, you would be able to throw those Hapkido moves in along with your Tang Soo Do stuff. So you're not in a box. You're branching out. So kicking is not over here and punching over here and then self-defense over here. You're combining it, and like some of those takedowns that come up with the El Sushik, it's easy because you somebody standing there like a mannequin. But some you can do in Hosen Sul. Some of the takedowns you could do free fighting. And you said, well, we did kickboxing, we had boxing gloves, so you couldn't grab. So you had to do takedowns that you could do with the gloves on without grabbing. So anyway, yeah, we have stuff. I haven't been thinking too much lately. I don't know why, but if I had my studio, I'd be doing it. But you're right. That's a good way to think of it. I have stuff to teach I haven't thought of.
Well, it sounds like you've built up a pretty good library of things throughout the years, between forms you remember from your instructor, the one steps, and cane form. You built up a pretty good bank of information.
Sure, and I would take from everybody. I'm not necessarily creating
Right.
A takedown. It's there. And I would get stuff from Master Godwin, Hapkido techniques at the Masters Clinic, and all these masters that would show a variety of things. I would say, oh, I like that. I'm going to take that home. And when I was teaching in my garage prior to the World Tang Soo Do, and this guy, Felipe, he was a 6th Dan from Venezuela, and he came up, and he was doing some of these kicks that or kicking drills. You go around the room on one foot and you're just kipping, you kip across and you're down and back. And we were doing a lot of kickboxing back then, and this is like early 80s, and some of that stuff wouldn't apply in kickboxing, but it didn't matter. I couldn't do it. So I'm going to take whatever I can from this guy. This guy could really, and I learned some of this stuff. And I had another black belt there who tested for master with me. He says, he's not with us anymore, but the association. He said, Jim, I don't think we should turn the class over to this guy. And I know why, because we look foolish trying to do some of his techniques. I said, why? And he said, well, it's our thing and we don't want to look bad. I said, look bad. I said, I want to learn from this guy. So I took as much as I could from this guy. So anybody who can teach me something, even a white belt, can you see them do something different than what you showed them, but it worked. He said, wow, yeah, I like that. Uh, and anybody you can learn from. So we're always a student, right? We're always a student.
Absolutely, I love that mindset. Uh, just recently, a couple months ago, I was teaching a very basic form to a lower belt, and I forget what it was, but they said something. It's like, you know what? I never thought about it that way before, but I'm going to start telling people that, so, and I'll remember that from you.
Yes, yeah.
It's like,
Sometimes a student will describe what you told them in a different way,
yeah,
and some of the classes weren't getting it the way I described it. I said that makes more sense. It makes more sense.
absolutely. Yeah, you were talking about taking things from different styles and putting them together, and I love that mindset too. I often tell people to not compartmentalize forms. It's like, well, remember this form move we did in this form? We're having trouble with it here. You got to bring it over. And people, like I said, they compartmentalize things, even not just styles, but forms. So I like that idea of putting everything together, and I'm a big proponent and have been for years of
Well, even in our advanced one steps, Master Stein came up with this out of our uh, Ping on Saigon. So I think I'll just say, I think it's number 3 advanced ones that he does out of, you'll recognize it. But he do the elbow, but then he adds a sweep on it too. But side kick, elbow. But he does more in a sparring type of posture. And so and there's also a Pingyan Idon technique in one of those too. But yeah, you can take that stuff and just modify it and make it work. Playing music since 1965, and I still play. But the thing about music and Tang Soo Do martial arts, you can always get better. You can always get better. I know some drummers who say, "Oh, yeah, he says, I don't practice. I just show up to the gigs and play." But you can always get better. I mean, I see these young people, and the same with martial arts. Like you look at these martial art extreme. Who's the girl from England, Chloe Bruce?
yes.
See the way she kicks, and he said, "Geez, But I had a DVD I ordered which has some exercises she had, and so that was, we did some of these exercises in my class at the end of class, and it makes you a better kicker. I'd never kick like her. I'll never kick like her, but I can, you learn that, so you always get better, and it's that's a good thing, isn't it? I mean, we're never at the top.
Yeah, constantly adding to your repertoire and evolving. You don't stick around for something as long as you have without learning new things. And could you imagine just doing the same thing over and over again for 50 years?
And Master Duffield uses this is back in the early 70s, and somebody was doing a form in a demonstration, and Kicho, and he did a low block, and somebody asked Master Duffield, "What is that?" "That's a low block." He says, "Wow." He says, "That's something." He says, "Wait till they do a full blast." He was kind of joking, and the person, but that was everything was so foreign to everything. I mean, there wasn't videos out. I remember going to see Billy Jack. Tom Walker, Bonk Suhan did the stunt work, and going to the theater and seeing it. And we had no videos. I had to go back and see this thing because I wanted to see the fight scene again out in the park. I'm going to take this foot and whop you on this side of the head, And I said, man, and his shoulders didn't move. Of course, it's camera. You don't know what exactly you're showing. His leg just went up and did this inside-outside kick. And so I stood in front of the mirror, trying to do that kick without making my shoulders move. Yeah, it was impossible. So, I got better at it just because I practiced it.
We talked earlier about traveling for kickboxing. Master Anderson says that it was an honor to have you at their Region 5 Don Camp. Can you talk about some of the places you've had the opportunity to travel to teach and train Tang Soo Do?
Well, I went to Australia on the kickboxing, and when I fought the Philippine team, they came here, and most of our kickboxing was West Coast. Benny Equatus had a couple schools, and I think there was a school from Bakersfield we competed against. These guys were tough, by the way, but I lost that fight too. I I don't make excuses, but I was 164 pounds. I was going to fight at 158, and so. But I'm most proud of this fight that I lost. I mean, this because you're competing with yourself, not that's the way I looked at it. Kind of. So I got down to 158. So my instructor says we had 12 days before the fight, and he says the guy you're supposed to fight hurt his ankle. I said, he says, but they got another guy who was 148. Can you? I just lost weight. I got down to 150. So 12 days, I lost 12 pounds.
Wow.
I got down to 146, and we went for the weigh-in. I was 146, but I was just like weak. And anyway, I lost on a decision, but I was more proud of that fight than fights that I won because I challenged myself. The other travel I did was I really remember I went to Argentina in 1993, and I think this was part of my test. Grandmaster Shin had Maggie called and said, "Master DeBaca," and this was Thursday. I said, "Yeah." She says, "Grandmaster Shin's mother had passed away, and he wants you to go with Master Cole to Argentina." And I said, "Oh, first of all, Grandmaster Shin, I'd do anything for him." And he said, "Oh, and so I don't have my passport's expired." So all of a sudden, Grandmaster Shin picks up the extension and he says, "Master DeBaca, you can do?" I said, "Sir, I'll do my best. I'll go down and get a passport." So they faxed me the itinerary, went down to San Francisco on Friday. And if you drop off all your paperwork, you can pick it up at 5 o'clock or right before they close. So I did that. I went down there. I got my passport renewed. And on Monday, I left for Florida and met Master Cole. We went to Argentina. But I think that was my test because I was a fourth time for 6 years or more. I forget how long time. So yeah, maybe more, maybe 8 years. I think it's 8 years. And I didn't think about it. All of a sudden, next master's clinic, I was asked to test. But I felt bad because I got to Argentina and expecting Grandmaster Shin to come off the plane. Here comes this guy with long hair. My hair was longer, and what a letdown, Grandmaster Shin. And no, he's not here. But I had a great time, and it was so, everywhere you go, even in the States, or when I was regional director, went to Alaska and Guam, and I got, run tests, and everywhere you go, they just treat you so nice. I mean, that's the. I haven't been to Europe. I've always wanted to, things haven't worked out, but I've always wanted to go to Europe and visit there. But everybody's always so gracious, you travel. And it's a family, right? World Tang Soo Do family.
Absolutely. I haven't gotten to Europe either, but in doing these interviews, I've gotten the chance to talk to both Master Khans and some of the other instructors, and they're fantastic. I can't wait to be able to travel to all these places that I want to go to.
Oh yeah, you'll be treated well because you're part of the family.
Yes, sir. This kind of goes along. You mentioned a Grandmaster Shin in that last one. Master Nelson from Seattle asked, what's one of your favorite memories with Grandmaster Shin?
Oh, well, in the early days, Region 1, we didn't have tournaments. And so in '88, we had a clinic. Grandmaster Shin came out. Now, by this time, Master Stein was regional director. So Grandmaster Shin came out for the clinic. and we're having a picnic, and he says, Master DeBaca, he says, you ever host a tournament? I said, no, I help my instructor with the kickboxing tournaments, but that's a lot different. You got 10 fights, that means 20 people competing, but everybody's in the stands.
Right.
Big event with everybody competing. I said, oh, gee. I said, no, but I've never hosted one, but it sounds like I won't be able to say that next year. And he says, and he kind of laughed. He says, yes, I want you to host. Okay. And he says, Maggie can help you, make sure you know all that you need to have. So I said, okay. So in my studio, I had weightlifting, and I had these power lifters there. And these guys, they had the big bars, and they have the weights, and they do squats, and the bar is doing this, with the heavy weights, it's shaking. These guys were monster. So they had, when they put their events on, they had sculptures. They weren't trophies, they were sculptures. And so I had the logo that was the guy on the Humboldt joust seat, and the World Tang Soo Do logo. I sent all the artwork, and there was a guy who did the Swamp Thing from Marvel Comics. He lived down on the coast here, not too far from me. And I went out there, and I got in the pose, and he took a picture, and he took a picture from all sides. Then he drew it from all sides. So I got a hold of the sculptor. Guy said it wasn't until he moved to Oklahoma. So I called the guy. I'm going to send you the stuff. Can you make trophies? And he says, yeah, I can make those. And it really wasn't that expensive. It was like $3,500 for all these sculptures. And I said, I want the first place in gold, second place, silver, then bronze for the third place. And so they have to drive them out. There's so many, and they're big. They were like big and nice. But so he supposed to come out with the trophies, and I'm at the hotel. I'm checking. Grandmaster Shin hadn't flown in yet, so the trophies aren't there. I said, "Oh, geez, my first tournament. Oh, Grandmaster Shin, I'm letting him down." So we we go to San Francisco. We pick up Grandmaster Shin, and one of my musician friends also was a ironworker on the Golden Gate Bridge, and believe that you can go up. There's little elevators that go up to the very, very top. But you have to get permission from the bridge district to go there. So we're going to take Grandmaster Shin at the top. And so on the way up, he says, so what do you decide with the trophies or medals? I said, well, sir, I tried something different. He says, what you tried? I said, well, I ordered some sculptures, but they haven't shown up. So I don't know if we're going to have anything. And he said to me, if you don't try anything, you never learn. I said, wow. He took the weight off my shoulders. I mean, he patted me on the back. And I thought, wow, this is, thank you, because I was so stressed about this thing. Anyway, we showed up to the hotel with Grandmaster Shin back in Santa Rosa, hour drive away. And there's a guy unloading the trophies, the sculptures. And he had the big carts, and he's wheeling out. And there were some people looked at these things that were, from out of town, and they were staying at the hotel. They saw these things come up. And I think a couple of them weren't thinking about competing, and they saw these things. They said, well, I'm going to sign up. You could sign up that day. We didn't have like mandatory pre-registration. But that was an insight on Grandmaster Shin. Instead of saying, what, you idiot, you didn't make sure you got trophies and medals. And anyway, it was a success. So it was good. Worked out great.
That's great, sir. We're at the hour mark. I usually like to keep them right around an hour.
Okay. Everything else would be boring.
Oh no, not at all.
It wasn't.
we could easily go to another hour. Master Khan messaged me and said that you're one of the most humble masters in the WTSDA, and he would love to have you in the UK. So,
well, thank you.
You say the word.
I'd go.
Master Khan, I'm sure would be happy to host you.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for those who've tuned in. I know with the COVID thing, we haven't been able to get together, but this is the next best thing, and so I appreciate being part of this.
Yeah, I really appreciate you joining me, and we've talked back and forth for a couple months, and I'm glad we finally got the chance to sit down and talk. So thank you for your time, sir. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone for watching. Have a great rest of the weekend, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Tang Soo, sir.
Talk soon.